Hi there, and welcome to the Cotswold Explorer. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and welcome in particular to our new series, Cotswold Walks. Usually you find Ross, Widget, Gizmo and me in the towns and villages of the Cotswolds, sharing their stories and telling you a little about the history of these amazing places. In this series, however, we, or rather Ross, is following a selection of the many footpaths and circular walks the region has to offer. I've dispatched Ross, armed with his camera and drone, to complete the walks on your and my behalf, to bring you a taster of the beauty of this countryside, but leaving plenty for you to discover for yourselves should you decide to embark on a Cotswold stroll. My voice will be with you on the way, not only for directions, but as we go I'll tell you stories of nearby villages and places of interest. Today's walk, close to Chipping Norton, is called the Rollright Stones Circular Walk, and Ross filmed it in early spring. It takes about 90 minutes and is a relatively easy route, provided it's not too muddy. It starts at the King's Stone at the Rollright Stones, taking us round the Whispering Nights and across the fields through the hamlet of Little Rollright. At the time of filming, the route Ross used was quite a brief walk, but it seems one of the roads has now become private and access is denied, so a scenic diversion via the village of Salford, just a little way to the south, is now required. Visit our website for full details of the route, but for now, come with me. We parked the car in the lay-by on Cross Hands Lane, which, incidentally, marks the boundary between Oxfordshire and Warwickshire. This lay-by can get busy during the holiday season, but there's usually room for most of the year. First of all, we'll take a look over at the King's Stone, which stands tall and yet fails to overlook the village of Long Compton, a failing the importance of which we will come to shortly. This area has many fantastic tales of witchcraft and folklore, and as we continue on our journey, I'll tell you about some of these stories and superstitions. While admiring the view from the King's Stone, you might spot the capstone of an early Bronze Age burial chamber jutting out of the grass. Another Bronze Age barrow can be found very nearby, and excavations here in the 1980s discovered human cremations marked by wooden posts. It's thought that the King's Stone was erected around 1500 BC as a permanent marker for the burial sites. Weathering has no doubt played its part in how the stone looks today, but it was common practice during the 19th century to chip bits off it for souvenirs, to create good luck charms, to keep the devil at bay. The damage was extensive enough that legal protection for ancient remains were put in place in 1882, and the stones here were among the very first monuments to be put under its protection. Of course, it won't surprise you to hear that there is a far more plausible explanation as to why the King's Stone is here. A certain Bronze Age king, the name of whom is not reliably recorded, set forth at the head of his army to conquer all England. On climbing this ridge, he encountered a devious local witch. She promised him that if, in 7 long strides, he could see the village of Long Compton below, then the throne of England would be his. Thinking he knew the topography, the king confidently took the 7 strides to the top of the hill, but alas, The false horizon created by the top of Longcompton Hill had fooled him and entirely obscured his view. Whereupon the vindictive witch turned him and his entire army to stone. She herself apparently becoming an elder tree, presumably as a result of the effort. A much more convincing tale, I'm sure you agree. We cross the road now to the stone circle. Legend would have it that no one can count the number of stones 3 times and get the same number each time. There are in fact about 70 stones of heavily weathered oolitic limestone set in a rough circle spanning about 30 metres. The English antiquarian William Stukely gives a rather poetic description of the monuments, said to make a very noble rustic sight and strike an odd terror upon the spectator, and admiration at the design of them. The number of stones has changed over the years. It's thought that originally there were around 100. When they became protected in law in 1883, the owner reportedly replaced all the fallen stones into what he thought were their original foundations. But this is now thought to be rather inaccurate. There are signs that the site was originally built in an accurate circle. We'll now walk across the top of the field and down to the stones known as the Whispering Knights. Chipping Norton sits rather dreamily in the distance on the slope of a hill, while we follow the path round the corner of the field, gently sloping downwards. After a few hundred yards, we come upon the Whispering Knights, said to be leaning towards one another, conspiring against their king. In fact, these stones probably predate the king's men and the king's stone by about 1,000 years. There are 4 upright stones and a large fallen capstone, giving the effect of a giant doorway facing downhill. It's probable that a couple of extra stones would have supported the capstone to form a table-like structure. Early Neolithic, Beaker and early Bronze Age pottery has been found in the immediate area, which does make you wonder just how ancient this site is. It is a magnificent sight and well worth a visit. As we walk southwest towards Little Rollright, I'll tell you some of the other superstitions and tales associated with the stones. I've already mentioned the story of the witch turning the king and his men to stone, and you can search the channel for our previous video where I read the myth in full. Another legend tells of a baker who, in an effort to count the stones, baked loaves of bread and placed one on each stone. But each time he attempted to collect them up, some had gone missing. Perhaps they were somehow spirited away. He certainly thought so. But I fear we will never know. It also seems to be dangerous to move the stones or try and chip pieces off. It is said that anyone who tried to take a piece of stone would find the wheels of their wagon completely locked up. One local mother blamed her son's death from typhus on the fact that he had chipped off a piece of the stones for good luck. These superstitious tales really illustrate just how much these megalithic stones can spark people's imagination and encourage a belief in the supernatural. One final legend tells of a farmer who, using all 4 of his working horses, dragged one of the stones down from the hill to his farm, where he used it as part of a clapper bridge. After just one night, the farmer awoke to find that the stone had flipped over onto the bank. Each time he replaced it, the same thing happened. Eventually, the farmer decided to take it back to its rightful place. This time, it took just one horse to pull it up the hill. Continuing along the path, through various farm fields on either side of us, we find ourselves in the very small cluster of buildings known as Little Rollright. Could this be the farm from which our stone thief came? It's unlikely you'll ever come here, unless travelling on foot. It's very difficult to access. It's not impossible, as thanks to the presence of the medieval Church of St. Philip, there is a public right-of-way. On this occasion, Ross resisted the temptation to enter this little church, so we may well come back here when the weather is better and film it as a Cotswold gem. I gather there is a pair of magnificent 17th century wall tombs to enjoy, so there may be some other treasures to discover. We'll be back. Carry on through this cluster of idyllic cottages, past the Manor House, formerly Manor Farmhouse, which is dated 1633 on the north gable end, but was much altered in the 18th and 19th century. In 2006 to 2008, a large extension was built to the southeast by architect Robert Adams in the Georgian style. As you make your way over the cattle grids, you'll come to a junction. Now, Ross turned left here, but it appears that this route has now become a private driveway. So take the path to the right and stick to it. You will come upon the village of Salford. You can then either walk into Salford or follow the path back to the northeast and rejoin the route we took via the Salford Trout Lakes. Our website has more information, and you can find the route on all trails. The track we took led us alongside the Little Rollright Brook, and after a left turn we came across a small ford. Hopefully you will have taken the detour to Salford, and the ford is where you rejoin us. The next part of the walk has beautiful countryside to enjoy. Cross over the road leading into Little Rollright and continue on up the public footpath. You can see just how muddy it is when we attempted it, so be sure to bring your wellies if you're attempting this in the winter, or even in as wet a spring as this one. The fields will begin to slope upwards as we start circling back to the Rollright Stones. Follow the footpath signs to the left and you'll see a lovely little pond. As you can see, we were lucky enough to see some wild daffodils. Head through this field into the next one and then cross over diagonally to the stile. Whoever lives in the house you find here is a very lucky soul indeed to have such wonderful views. Once past the house and outbuildings, another left turn brings you to a small path lined with hornbeams and Scots pine. Through the gate at the end, and you'll quickly recognize where we were earlier. The circle is complete, and we're back at the Whispering Nights. A wonderful Cotswold Walk for all abilities. We hope you enjoy this episode of Cotswold Walks. Visit our website, thecotswoldexplorer.co.uk, for an entire library of places to visit in the Cotswolds. And be sure to subscribe to the channel to see all of our future Cotswold Walks. We'll see you again very soon. somewhere else in the Cotswolds.